Trigger warning, this scary story that was sent to me to read on this page is absolutely petrifying. So if you are faint of heart or you want to get a good night's sleep, you might want to go ahead and scroll, but let's get into it. The email reads, "Hi, my name is Izzy and I lived in a haunted home on and off my entire childhood growing up. My grandparents' home, a 2-story, 4-bed, 3-bath house built in the 1950s. Her and my grandfather are the third owners of this massive, creaky house in a small town of Fallon, Nevada. Off and on my entire childhood I lived there was always 2 areas in the house that just felt off. The first was my grandma's giant walk-in closet in her bedroom. No noticeable activity has actually occurred in there, but the second anyone approaches that closet, you can feel some sort of evil exhibiting from it. Second, of all places, was my childhood bedroom, which had that same evil feeling along with activity occurring in it throughout the years. The first incident occurred when I was just 3 years old. I used to see this teenage girl every night before bed. Her name was Triss. She'd appear in my room shortly after I'd be tucked in. She would laugh with me, talk about my day with me, let me play with her long, curly auburn hair. She never scared me. Then once I started getting super tired, she would say, "See you tomorrow night," and walk into my closet, shut the door behind her, and disappear. It seemed so genuine to my toddler brain at the time. This continued for about 6 months, every single night, until one day, after my grandma was putting up some old pictures, one of them was of Triss. I immediately pointed the photo out, recognizing the girl, and said, "Hey, that's my friend, Triss. She visits my room every night." You could imagine the horror in my grandparents' face when I recognized the photo of their late daughter, who had passed away 2 years before I was born in a brutal car wreck. Nobody had ever mentioned my aunt to me. At the time, I was too young to understand, so nobody told me about her. And it just so happened that my late aunt's name was Trista. Because I was so young, my grandparents decided to try and not think too much on it after the initial shock. They brushed it off and assumed maybe I'd seen the picture at one point going through old photo books, and maybe I made up an imaginary friend. They were just trying not to think too much of it. But this was not an imaginary friend. She was real, to me at least. Little did I know, though, that mentioning her name to my grandparents changed it all. For the next few nights after that, Triss didn't come. I remember waiting for her every night, even calling her name out, but she did not show. Until night 4. Finally, on the 4th night, she came back, but she was different. She looked disheveled and dirty. Her skin was pasty and pale. Her curly hair knotted and frizzy. Even her voice was different. She was no longer the sweet, quirky girl that I adored. She was mean. And mean looking, in all honesty. She didn't say much either. In fact, she sat at the foot of my bed and said one thing: "You stupid child, you shouldn't have said a damn thing." Then she got up, went back into my closet, and I never saw her again. From that point on, my room was always off. I always had nightmares. This continued up until my teens, where my final straw in this room was a sleep paralysis situation where a demonic woman tried choking me in my own bed, resulting in me waking up with scratches and bruises on my neck. After that, I switched rooms. Then, on my 17th birthday, I had some friends over. My old room was the guest room by that point, and I just so happened to have my friend's boyfriend present, so he would sleep in that room while us girls slept in my room. That sleepover went great until her boyfriend went to bed early to give us some girl time, which only lasted about 30 minutes. As us girls were gossiping, assuming he had gone to bed, we got a knock on the door. My friend's boyfriend was outside my door. He was petrified. The second he realized that we were all in the room, he said he wasn't alone, and now he knows whatever was in the room with him was not one of us. He claimed that someone was pacing back and forth in the dark room at the foot of his bed. At first he thought it was one of us, so that's why he came to see if we were all in my room, which we were, and not one of us had stepped foot out of my room. This realization scared him to the point where he refused to go back in that room. He ended up sleeping on my bedroom floor that night because of how terrified he was, and he refused to step back in there alone to pack up his things the next day. Time since has come and gone. In almost 8 years since that last instance, there is still activity. My old room now has a new occupant. It is now my teenage cousin's room, as she lives with my grandparents half-time. Even she feels evil and has experienced activity herself. She claims that every night she experiences nightmares, and most nights she can see the shadow of a woman pacing at the foot of the bed. She even sees the closet door slam shut, and even hears scratching and whispers coming from the closet at all hours of the night. And even to this day, whenever I visit, I can still feel something off in that room whenever I stepped into it. Thinking back, I don't think Triss was actually my aunt's spirit. I think this was something evil toying with my younger self, and whatever it is, it's still there. Except for now, it's toying with whoever stays in that room. I switched rooms, so it became the guest room. It then toyed with my friend's boyfriend, and now it toys with my cousin. To this day, we cannot find history on the house. Everything in that house's past is sealed off. I wish I could find more. The only info on that house is my grandparents. And yes, while I do still visit, I try to stay clear of that room as much as I can. Whatever is in there, it's dark, and I don't want to entertain it. First of all, Izzy, thank you so much for sharing your story and allowing me to share it on this page. Girl, when I read that, I literally had shivers down my spine. I also appreciate how detailed you were. You were so detailed that I almost felt like I was there. As far as searching for the house history, try to find out who owned it before your grandparents. Look that name up, and then go online to different archives to try to search through newspapers. It has taken me a really long time, but with my parents' house, that is how I've had the best luck at being able to like tie different things together, is actually super old newspaper articles. To anyone else, if you want to hear more scary stories, make sure to go ahead and give me a follow, like, comment, and share. And if you want to submit your scary story to have me share here on my page, my email is located in my bio. You can send it and submit it, and I will try to get to it. I've been getting a ton of submissions, and thank you to everybody who has sent them. Just be patient with me. I'm trying to get through them all.
This girl sent in a story to me about how she watched someone pass away. They cursed her right before they passed away, and now she is dealing with these terrifying, what I would call demonic experiences. This is gonna live rent-free in my head forever. Now, this girl's name is Margarita, and she lives in Latvia. What happened to her began on an ordinary day. She was just visiting her grandmother. Everything was normal. It was bright outside, and she did not feel scared or uneasy in any way. Now, she was out and about doing stuff, and she was on her way back home when she notices that there's this older woman that's helping this other woman. Now, the woman that was being helped was incredibly small and frail, and she was hunched over, and the other woman that was helping her, well, both of them seemed very worried. The woman that is helping the elderly woman calls Margarita over and just says, "Hey, can you do me a favor? I'm really worried about her. She can't walk right now. Can you help us walk her back to her apartment?" Now, something stuck out to Margarita that was very strange. She noticed that the elderly woman did not want them to call an ambulance, even though in Latvia you can call ambulances and they are free as long as it's not a false alarm. Now, Margarita feels really bad about this, so she's like obviously going to help them. So she walks over and she starts helping the woman back to this apartment, the building that the elderly woman claims is her building. Now, many apartment buildings in Latvia still have the old post-Soviet style entrances. They can only be opened by typing a code into a metal panel. So they get to the door and the elderly woman begins lifting up her weak arm and is like trying to touch the buttons. But the code was not registering, and she just keeps pressing the buttons again and again, and her hands are shaking. And suddenly Margarita feels that something is wrong with this situation. And as soon as Margarita starts getting this feeling, the older woman just grabs onto her jeans with unexpected force. Then the woman's hands just tighten so hard it shocked her. And then she looks right into her eyes and says in Latvian, "Go to her. I will not live anymore." But the voice sounded like it came from far away. The moment she says that, her entire body just goes limp. It was like as if the life had just drained out of her instantly. She collapses, falls forward, smashing her head against the concrete wall beside the door. This happened so fast, none of them could react, and they are just in shock. Now, at this point, they call the ambulance, and it arrives extremely quickly because they live right by the station. So the EMTs start examining the woman. They look up at Margarita, and they tell her something that makes her stomach twist. They said that her heart had already stopped, and that it was very strange that they had claimed that she had collapsed only 10 minutes ago, because her body was already stiff, like she had been unalived much earlier than 10 minutes prior. Made no sense. She felt this cold thing crawl up her body when she heard that. And at this point, she is like, "I'm getting out of here." And she just goes home. When Margarita gets home, she keeps playing those last words in her head. "Go to her. I will not live anymore." Over and over. She could not shake this feeling that when she grabbed onto her, that she passed something to her. Something dark, something heavy. So at this point, she decides to go to her altar and perform a protection spell so she can calm down. The moment she starts preparing everything, something completely unexpected happens. The clothes organizer standing next to her altar, the kind from IKEA where you hang shirts, suddenly just cracks completely in half. It was completely new. It had never been damaged before. She said it felt like something invisible had slammed into it. Later that day, she calls one of her friends and she's telling her friend about what happened. This is crazy to her, right? When there's these two hooks that were on her wall and they were securely screwed onto the wall, and they just rip off the wall and come off the wall right after she's talking about this with her friend. She said she felt like the more she talked about it, it, the more strange things would occur. That night, she had a nightmare that was so vivid, it felt real. In the dream, that old woman was holding on to her the same way that she was holding on to her in the street. Behind this woman stood this tall, black, shadowy figure, and before she could move or scream or do anything, it leaned over and just slammed itself into her body. So right as this happens, she snaps awake and she's shaking, and her eyes are starting to adjust to the room, and she suddenly looks over, and there is that tall, dark figure just leaning over her, staring at her. It's just towering above her. She blinks, this thing is gone, but that feeling stayed with her for a long time. The whole experience has made her feel extremely uneasy, and she doesn't understand why this happened to her and why that woman spoke those last words to her. But one thing she does know is the feeling that something followed her home that day is very real. By the way, she drew a picture of what that thing looked like, and this is what it looked like. That's the picture that she drew. So that's terrifying. She did say that I could tag her, so she will be tagged in the description. So if you guys have any questions, suggestions, or comments, you can drop them below. But as always, please be respectful. But what do you guys think about this story? I think this is one of the craziest stories I have gotten. First of all, she sees somebody pass away right in front of her. And on top of that, they speak those words to her. And then she starts having these crazy experiences. That's a wild story. That, when I read this, I was like, my jaw was on the floor. Was this woman purposely asking her to come and help her so that she could transfer this demon or whatever this thing was onto her? And one of the scariest parts to me is that the EMTs, or I don't know what they call them in Latvia, if they're EMTs or if they're called something else, told her that she had been unalived for a lot longer than 10 minutes. So they were walking around with an unalived person. That's terrifying in itself. She did start to feel like something was wrong, though. She felt it as soon as she was pressing the buttons and it wasn't working. So that part is also confusing. The whole story is absolutely insane. I would love to know your thoughts, opinions, and suggestions. So definitely drop them below.
I feel like glitches are happening more and more often, or at least people are talking about them more. My brother witnessed the weirdest thing a few days ago. He said that a few of his friends went over to him and his boyfriend's apartment. They were playing games, they were having some drinks, they were eating food, and just living their best lives. He had been on his phone because he was putting on music on their Bluetooth speaker, and then he smells a little something weird. He goes and checks on his puppy, and his puppy had an accident. So he goes, he cleans it, everything's fine, washes everything, washes his hands, comes back and finishes their game, and everything pretty much went back to normal. Again, he used his phone to put on music on the Bluetooth speaker. He also took his phone into the specific room where his puppy had the accident. He used the flashlight, cleaned it up. Again, everything was normal. They finished off their game, and a little bit after that, people were ready to go home because it was almost midnight and everyone is saying their goodbyes. He's gonna walk them downstairs and he's like, where's my phone? He's looking around for it, tries to ping it with his watch, but his watch was dead. He tells his boyfriend, hey, can you call my phone? He calls it, doesn't see anything because his ringtone has that flash that it turns on. Doesn't see the flash, doesn't hear the ringtone. Him, his friends, the boyfriend, everyone is looking for his phone and it is nowhere to be found. He decides to go outside and walk his friends out, and he's like, everything's fine. I'm sure it's gonna come up somewhere. Maybe it died. Who knows? It has to be inside because I was just using it. As they're walking down the stairs, they are standing by kind of like the balcony area, and he tells his friend, can you just call me one more time? Maybe my boyfriend can hear it inside. She calls it. Her car is visible from where they're standing, and they can see the flashlight flashing from his ringtone in her car. It stops. They kind of stop and look at her car and he tells his friend, can you call me again? She does, and it's the same thing, flashing. They run downstairs, they go into the front seat of her car, and there is his phone. How? Obviously, I had a whole bunch of questions. I was like, were you ever in her car? He said, yes. So we went to the store earlier that day, but I was sitting in the back seat. I was nowhere near the front. I grabbed all my stuff. We went upstairs. I used my phone to connect the speaker to play some music. I also used my phone to use the flashlight to go clean up the dog. How did it end up in my friend's car? Nobody had left the apartment. Nobody had stepped foot outside. Nobody had gone to her car. So, how did the phone get into her car? Yeah, that's pretty weird. What do you guys think happened? Let me know in the comments and keep sending me your spooky story times.
So my mom just unlocked a childhood memory for me. Apparently, I had a haunted doll growing up. I mean, it wasn't a doll, it was like an action figure. This is what it looked like. It was the Terminator doll. It had a button in the back that you would press and he would say, "I'll be back." And his eyes would light up red whenever you would like push the button in the back. When we first moved to the US from Colombia, I didn't have any toys. My grandfather, my dad's father, found this doll at a Goodwill and gifted it to me. Mind you, I had never even seen the movie. My mom says that I became obsessed with this doll, that I would literally bring him everywhere. She couldn't understand why I was so obsessed with this thing, because to her, she didn't even think it was a cute doll. Two, and also it's like a boy's toy. And third, I have never even seen the movie, so why was I so obsessed with this thing? One night, she says I woke up crying because Mr. I'll be back started what was his name? Terminator started going off on his own. Mind you, he was all the way across the room from me. I started hearing him say, "I'll be back," and his lights started to turn on all on their own. I'm freaking out. I yell at her. She comes in and she grabs the doll. Thinking that it's probably just like a battery issue, she kind of just tosses the doll to the side, like she throws him in the basement and kind of forgets about the whole thing. A couple days later, she sees me again with the doll. So she's just like, okay, whatever. She must have just grabbed it from the basement, no big deal. She says after that, I literally would spend hours in my room just playing with this doll. And she would hear me having conversations with this doll, and she was just kind of like, whatever, she's bored, she's a kid, like she didn't really think much of it. And it just continued on. One day, she said she walked into my room and I wasn't in my room when I was supposed to be. She looked over, she saw that my window was open. Mind you, I had this like giant ledge like right outside my bedroom window. She says that when she looked out, she saw me out there and started, of course, yelling for me to come back in. She's, of course, mad. And when I come back in, she's like, why on earth would you be out there? Like, you know you're not allowed to go out there. I told her it was because the Terminator doll told me to go out there, that he was actually waiting for me at the ledge. That was literally it for my mom. My mom grabbed the doll, took it to the backyard, and she hammered it to a bunch of pieces. And thankfully, it was recycling day that day. She just threw it in the trash and it was gone. So yeah, when your kids tell you there's something weird going on, or if you see your kids maybe spending too much time in their rooms talking to no one, you should pay attention.
So apparently you guys really like to hear duende stories from the 956. Like, I like them, but then somebody said, oh yeah, Harlingen, in a very specific area that I live in, and I don't fucking like that. Why'd you gotta say that? What? Couldn't you have lied and said not in Harlingen? Westlake, Texas, you're not safe. I saw the tiny arm come out from a pile of fabrics my grandmother had placed on my desk. I got up, picked up the pile, and shook it over my bed, and it disappeared. I got to bed and hear tiny steps dash running from under the desk to under my bed. I was in bed still, and I heard scratching sounds under. I felt the presence for a whole week. You saw it on your desk in your room, heard it go under the bed, and you still slept in that room. I would have been sleeping with my mom. Or I would have told my sibling, hey, we should switch rooms. Far, Texas. I saw one in Far during my junior year. It was peeking at me from my neighbor's tree as I was on my way to the school bus. My uncle said that a small figure with a hat used to dance at the foot of his bed at night. We know is correct, because what the fuck? We had a duende in our home when I was little. I was the only one who could see him. He was an ass sometimes, but he never did anything bad, only mischievous. My son's friends lived in Alamo and said one would bother them and do tragedias. He's seen it and used to give it cookies so it would leave him alone. Wow. Duendes can be bought with food, and so can I. I actually encountered 3 when my son was only 2. He was asleep and I heard noises. It was around 3 a.m. He was next to me and I actually saw them on him, and they actually said that they were there to protect the kids. I live in San Juan. The only duendes están en la pulga del Álamo. Raymondville. My daughter saw one hanging around outside the laundromat. She no longer wants to go to the laundromat. I would agree with her. I would no longer want to go there. I'm gonna butcher this, so please forgive me. In Alaska, they're called Erkenrat. I know. My auntie and her friend went to berry pick and she brought whiskey with her. She said she spilled some for the little people so they can pick lots of blueberries. You know that? They showed her where they were. She goes, they like whiskey. Every day they just sound more and more like little old men. I also live in Harlingen. And I got attacked by a duende in the Pendleton Park. It came out of the bamboo near the... No, it didn't. No, it didn't. Oh my god. There's nowhere to go in the valley because apparently they're everywhere. What the fuck? How did you get attacked? Please tell us more. We need to hear this story. Anyway, if you guys want to hear more, let me know.
We listen, we don't get scared, and we don't judge. Let me tell you guys a story time of the older sister who was jealous of the little sister because she got married first. So for story's sake, we're gonna call the younger sister Sugar and we're gonna call the older sister Spice. For context, guys, Sugar was a rebellious child, okay? She was not a good child growing up at all. You know, she had a baby, I think, at 17. And, you know, Spice was the one that, you know, studied, did her chores. You know, she was the one when everybody was going right, she was also going right. Sugar's going left, you know. But the thing about Spice is Spice loved people's praises. Like, she loved people to praise her. She was the type of person that will come to a certain place and tell people what she has. And one day, Sugar had a second born by this guy. And obviously, Spice had a ball out of that. Because she was like, look at my sister. She has 2 kids. She doesn't have a job. She doesn't have this. She doesn't have that. I have a car. I have a job. I have this. Yeah, she was that kind of person. Unfortunately for Spice, this man made Sugar turn a new leaf. He took her to school, I think, and you know, he took her to school, he took care of the kids, she graduated, she got a good job. Now obviously Sugar and Spice are on the same level, and that doesn't sit right with her because the attention is off on her because people are just like, wow, Sugar turned a new leaf, blah blah blah. Her jealousy, you could not see her jealousy until she found out that Sugar was getting married. Mind you, she has no man, she has no kids. So that made her mad. And also people were saying, oh my days, like she's older, she was supposed to be married first, she was supposed to have had kids. You know, all the ridicule that she had been throwing on Sugar is now being thrown at her because tables turn. Hello. Apparently, during the Lobola negotiations, she was not there for some odd reason. People were not celebrating. She was not there. She came later on and she was dressed in full black clothing. Like, the wedding day comes or whatever, and you know, they're setting up the catering, they're setting up everything. It's beautiful. People are happy or whatever. As soon as it's time for the girls to leave the house, do a little dance and go inside the tent, it starts raining heavy. Thunderstorms, lightning, the clouds are dark gray, like it's crazy. So it's raining heavy or whatever, and Mrs. Spice there is playing music, guys, loud music from the speakers, since the speakers were covered by something, and she was dancing in the rain. What her excuse was, oh no, like I'm just happy that it's my sister's wedding, I'm just dancing, whatever. But it's like the entire day she was angry. Like they say, she was mad. She refused to put on her dress that she was supposed to wear as the bride's sister. She refused to help out the day before. Like she just refused to do a lot of things. All of a sudden it's raining and you're dancing. When I tell you, it rained so hard that it flooded the whole place. Mind you, it dirtied the tablecloths, the seats were floating on water, the chairs were floating, the tent was still intact, but everything else was floating. It was just a disaster. It was so sad. Sugar was crying, guys. I was at the wedding, like she was crying, yo. And obviously the wedding can't continue because we have to wait for the water to subside, and it doesn't look like it's gonna subside anytime soon. So the wedding at the bride's house had to be cancelled, and then they went to the rooms, and that's when everything went according to plan. And honestly, it was so sad, shame. So Sugar, I forgot to mention at the beginning that Sugar is my mom's niece, but she is a niece in such a way that Sugar's mom is my mom's cousin. So they're not really related like that, you know. My mom and her mom are cousins, and then she takes Sugar like a niece, because you know how us in black communities take our cousins as sisters. You get it. So I think a couple of weeks down the line, she came to visit, whatever. She came with the kids and her husband, and you know, my mom cooked for them and they were talking, and I was standing in the passage listening in. And so my mom was like, "What is Spice, you know? I last saw her a very long time ago," and she's like, she and Spice don't speak to her. Even her mom doesn't speak to Spice anymore, because allegedly when the wedding venue flooded, it was all because of her. After all of that happened, she and her husband's family went to a traditional healer. Because they went to a traditional healer that particular morning before the wedding started, because they thought, this can only be manpower. It can never be God, It can only be somebody concocting such things. So the morning of, they went to a sangoma so that they can be protected. And the guy told them that the person that is doing all of this is very close to you guys. It's very close to her than you guys think. And she was like, why? And she was like, why would that person do this? And they were like, it's because they're jealous of you. It's nice when you're doing bad. It's nice. It makes people feel good because they have something to say about you so that they feel better about themselves. But when you start doing good, nobody really pays attention to them, and they start to pay attention to the both of you, and they don't like that. Sugar's sister Sugar didn't get it, right? And the man told them that the person that is responsible for all of this will be wearing all dark clothing. Everybody else will be wearing bright. She will be the only one that's wearing dark clothing. Watch out for her. And then they did the things, whatever. And the guy told her, do not allow her to touch anything, whether it be venue, touch the kids, nothing. Don't allow her to do anything. And she says, he was like, okay, sharp. She was like, you will see the person when they arrive. You will just know it's them. The day, and then the wedding starts, and they see her. As soon as they see her, guys, she was wearing all black clothing for one. Like, she's a person that's in mourning. And then she instead of her going inside the house to greet people, she wanted to start at the decor. Kanti, they are here, they are waiting for her. And they stopped her. They're like, no, you can't go near the decor. And she threw a fit because she couldn't. And then she started crying. And then she wanted to hug she wanted to hug Sugar. And Sugar was like, no, I don't want to hug you. Like, don't speak to me. Why are you wearing all black? Blah, blah, blah. And then they chased her. She left, actually. Nobody chased her out. She left the wedding. And she was crying. And she was like, Sugar is not treating her well. She never loved her. She caused a tantrum and she left. And the wedding continued afterwards. And Sugar is like, I never want to speak to her ever again, because jealousy could never make you do things like that. Like, if it was her, I would have been happy for her. She graduated, I was happy for her. She bought a car, I was happy for her. Now it's my turn to get all of those things. She wants to rent it for me. No.
I guess I'm just having a hard time understanding why, if you were struggling to get pregnant, your first thought would be, oh, I should lie to everyone, tell everyone in my life that I'm pregnant, and then go steal a baby out of a pregnant woman's womb. Because how on earth does that thought even cross your mind? 42-year-old Amber Waterman and her husband, 42-year-old Jamie Waterman, lived in Pineville, Missouri in 2022, and in September of 2022, they had something big to celebrate because the couple found out that they were expecting. This was huge for them. Amber finding out that she was going to get to be a mother was the best thing in her entire life, but it was even more exciting because the couple had struggled to get pregnant in the first place. They were starting to doubt if they would be able to have their own baby at all, and they didn't know if they were going to be able to create the family that they had always wanted, so finding out that they were pregnant felt like a true miracle. And Amber went on social media to announce her pregnancy, posting the ultrasound pictures, consistently posting about appointments and updates and questions and concerns. She talked about the due date, the mood swings, the excitement, the nerves. She was sharing everything, very active on social media. And yet another person who was also very active on social media was a woman called Lucy Barrows. Lucy Barrows loved to post on a specific Facebook group, a group that was meant for buying and selling secondhand baby items, and she was at her peak of posting in October of 2022. Pregnant women who were expecting would go on to that Facebook group and post about needing or looking for specific baby items, and very quickly, it became a pattern that anytime anyone asked for anything such as a stroller or clothes or baby monitors or car seats, Lucy Barrows would be the first one to raise her hand and say, I have what you're looking for, when can we meet up? Lucy would also message people from the group privately saying that she had a ton of baby stuff that she was looking to get rid of, and saying that she would give them whatever they needed or wanted for free. All they had to do was meet up with her, and one of the women in the group was 33-year-old Ashley Bush. Ashley Bush and her fiance Joshua Willis had 3 children together, 2 that were from Ashley's previous marriage, 1 that they had together, but all 3 kids lived with them, and they were very excited about their 4th that was on the way. Their kids were 2, 7, and 8 years old, and Ashley was 31 weeks pregnant with a baby girl who they had already named Valkyrie Grace Willis. Ashley and Joshua were the epitome of puppy love. It sounds like Ashley was just a ray of sunshine who adored her husband and adored her children, and their little family was the most important thing in the world to them. Ashley was kind and sweet and gentle, and Joshua
was the perfect family for her, the perfect dad, but also stepdad. In October of 2022, the family was living in Arkansas. They were getting everything prepped to welcome their new baby girl into the world. And even though they were really excited, Joshua and Ashley were a little bit stressed financially, understanding that their family of 5 was about to be a family of 6, meaning their expenses would go up. And it was also a stressful time because Ashley was very obviously pregnant, due to give birth at any point in time, meaning that she would have to take time off work to do that. She was also dealing with complications in her pregnancy, and her doctor advised her to stay out of work due to those complications. But Joshua was also dealing with his own health issues. He had multiple surgeries, so he had to take time off work as well. So they were worried financially about how they were going to be able to make things work. And in an attempt to save money where they could, Ashley joined Facebook groups in the area where other parents would sell and buy baby stuff. That's how Lucy Barrows found her, and that's why she messaged her. Lucy messaged Ashley saying, hey, I see you're looking for X, Y, and Z. I have those things and I would be more than happy to give them to you for free. But what really caught her eye about the message was that Lucy also said, hey, by the way, I also know about a job opening for a work from home job, and I actually think that you would be the perfect fit for the job. So to Ashley, Lucy was like an answered prayer. She was stressed about getting things together for the baby. She was stressed about her job, and in comes Lucy Barrows, who seems to have a solution for both of those problems. She could help her out by giving her baby items, and if Ashley was able to secure the job, she would be able to work from the comfort of her own home, which would make things so much easier for her, taking care of not only 3 kids but also a newborn. So Ashley agrees to meet up with Lucy on October 28th of 2022 at a public library in Gravette, Arkansas. But right before, Lucy tells Ashley that she needs to make sure that she comes alone, because according to Lucy, she had been robbed in the past and she was very wary, so she would rather it just be the 2 of them. And she tells Ashley to please not bring anyone but herself. Ashley says okay, sure, but she does have her fiance Joshua drop her off, and Joshua does stay in the parking lot while Lucy and Ashley meet up inside just to be safe, which good on him, glad he did that. By the way, don't meet up with strangers. I know I have a lot of younger girls watching my videos. Do not meet up with strangers, okay? Always take someone with you if you don't know the person that you are arranging to meet. Anyway, the meeting goes great, except for now I think is a good time to tell you that Lucy Barrows does not exist. Lucy Barrows was a fake Facebook page created by Amber Waterman in October of 2022, and Amber Waterman was never pregnant. She lied to everyone in her life about being pregnant. She was never pregnant. Everything was fake. She apparently, I guess, also lied to her husband, Jamie Waterman. He was also apparently under the impression that Amber really was pregnant, but we're going to circle back around to him later on. Point being, Amber Waterman was stalking Facebook groups to find pregnant women because she wanted to steal someone's baby, and she decided that Ashley Bush would be her perfect victim. So they meet up for the first time. Ashley and her fiance Joshua are still under the impression that Amber Waterman was this fake person, Lucy Barrows, and Ashley is feeling super hopeful after their first meeting. And at the end of the meeting, Amber hands Ashley over paperwork and tells her to be on the lookout from an email from this supposed fake boss for the second interview. And she explains to her that the last steps for Ashley to secure this job would be to travel with her, to travel with Amber to Bentonville, Arkansas for the final interview with this boss, apparently. So their little day trip to travel together to this final interview gets scheduled for October 31st on Halloween. The plan was that Joshua, Ashley's fiance, was going to drop off Ashley at a convenience store that was about 20-ish minutes away from their house. Lucy would be there waiting for her. Ashley would get in Lucy's truck and they would head off. Then they would meet back up in the afternoon for Joshua to pick up Ashley from that same convenience store, and then they would go home. I assume that convenience store was about halfway closer to their final destination, which is why they picked that as the meetup point to make the drive easier. So on October 31st, Joshua drove Ashley, his 33-week pregnant fiance, to that convenience store in Maysville. Joshua watched Ashley as she got out of his car and walked over to what they thought was Lucy Barrows' truck. Joshua saw Lucy, aka Amber, sitting in her truck and recognized her face as the same person who was at the public library, so he thought that it made sense and that Ashley would be safe. Ashley got in the truck with Amber and Joshua watched as they drove off. That was the last time that Joshua would see his fiance alive ever again. 4 hours later, he showed up again at the same convenience store to pick up Ashley, and that's when he saw Amber, who he still thought was Lucy, in her truck with Ashley also sitting in her truck, but Ashley seemed to be slumped over. When Amber saw Joshua, she made eye contact with him, and then Amber sped off and drove away. Joshua was so confused, and now he was concerned, and he sped off right behind Amber, chasing down her truck. He was chasing her, but he eventually lost her, so Amber now has gotten away with Ashley in her truck. So Joshua rushes back home. He pulls up Lucy Barrows on Facebook, thinking that maybe he would be able to find her home address and he would show up there to see if maybe she drove Ashley back to her house, but he cannot find any information on this Lucy Barrows. And that's when, for the first time, he realizes that Lucy Barrows might be a fake Facebook profile. He cannot find anything on Lucy. He calls the company that Ashley was supposed to be interviewing for, and it's a real real company, but they confirmed that they don't know anything about anyone being interviewed. They don't know anything about Ashley Bush, and especially they don't know anything about any Lucy Barrows. And Joshua realizes that everything was fake, and now he's sick to his stomach understanding that his fiancée Ashley was likely in danger. Every single call and text to Ashley was going unanswered, but Joshua was able to track her phone and see her location, so he sped off to the area in which her phone was pinging in. But the only thing he found was Ashley's phone ditched on the side of the road. There was no sign of Ashley or Amber, and that's when he called 911 to officially report his fiancée a missing person. By this point, Amber Waterman had driven all the way back to Missouri to her house with Ashley in her truck, and there she had taken a sharp object and used it on Ashley. Specifically on Ashley's stomach area with intentions of ripping her baby out of her and stealing it. We have no idea if Ashley was still alive, but all reports hint to the fact that she was, which is so sick, and I cannot imagine the pain and fear that she must have felt when Amber was doing what she did to her. It goes without saying that Amber had absolutely no idea what she was doing, but even if she did, even if she was a surgeon doing what she was doing to Ashley, knowing that Ashley was likely still alive, obviously she's not medicated or anything, so even if Amber did know what she was doing, the pain that Ashley would have been in is unbearable, as her baby was physically yanked away from her. 33-year-old Ashley Bush lost her life in the process, and the last thing that she saw moments before she passed was her baby, who she already loved so much, being ripped out of her. Afterwards, Amber herself called 911, and on the call, lying completely, she told the operator that she had just given birth by herself in her truck on her drive to the hospital, and she said that the baby was not breathing. She got in the truck with Ashley's baby, drove to an empty road to pretend that she had just given birth by herself in her truck, and she gave the operator that location for the ambulance to come and meet her. And while she was waiting for the ambulance, she also called her husband Jamie, who drove to meet her on the side of the road, and she was lying to him still. I guess that he really thought that she was pregnant, and he believed her, I guess, when she said that she had just given birth by herself in her truck. Like, obviously Amber didn't think things through or just flat out didn't care. I don't know how or why she thought that she would be able to ever pull off this fake story that she had just completely made up out of nowhere. By the time paramedics got there, the tiny little innocent tiny little baby was already gone. It was too late. Despite their best efforts, they could not save her. And when they looked at Amber, there were no signs at all that she had just given birth other than the placenta stuffed down her pants. But listen to this, for some reason the placenta that she has stolen and stuffed inside of her pants was enough for authorities to believe her story. Yeah, they believed Amber fully. They saw the placenta in her pants and said, yeah, okay, must be your baby. I'm not even lying. They believed her. I don't know if she was taken to the hospital. I don't know if they just let her go without taking her to seek medical attention. I don't know. But I do know that Amber was not questioned further. And following that tragic day, Amber Waterman began planning a funeral for the baby that she was still claiming was hers, continuing her lies, continuing to fool everyone around her that she had just lost her baby and that she was going to have a funeral for her. Meanwhile, the search for Ashley Bush was still underway. Joshua was in complete distress, not knowing what happened to his fiancée or where she disappeared from, and it did not take authorities long to be informed about this Lucy Barrows Facebook page. And after receiving the IP address from Facebook for that profile, investigators were led to none other than Amber Waterman's home address. So they go to Amber's house. She's there with her husband Jamie, and they're like, hey, what do you know about Lucy Barrows? What do you know about Ashley Bush? Amber says, oh, well, I don't know anything about Ashley Bush. And she says, by the way, now is not really the best time to chat because I just gave birth to my baby in my trunk a few days ago, and now I'm in a really hard place. I'm in the middle of planning a funeral, so I don't really want to talk right now. But I can tell you that Lucy Barrows was my old co-worker. We used to work at Walmart together. Other than that, I don't really know why my home address would be connected to Lucy's Facebook account. And officers say, okay, cool. Sorry to hear about your baby. My condolences. But thanks for letting us know that Lucy Barrows is your old co-worker from Walmart. And they leave her house and they go looking for this Lucy Barrows person who does not exist. What do you mean? What do you mean? Jamie, her husband, is obviously there when Amber is being questioned about the situation, and as soon as officers leave their house, Amber Waterman confesses to everything to her husband Jamie, saying, I was never pregnant, I faked the entire thing, I am actually in fact Lucy Barrows, and I used that fake Facebook profile to lure in Ashley Bush. I unalived her, I ripped her baby out of her, faked it as my own, and I've been hiding Ashley's body in the woods behind her house. And you would like to think that Joshua was shocked, disgusted, distraught, devastated, and that he would take this new information that he just got, this confession that he just got, straight to investigators. And he was shocked, but did he do the right thing and go and tell the officers the information that he had just found out? No. Instead, he decided that he was going to help his wife Amber cover this entire thing up. Because why not? So Amber and Jamie walk out of their house into the woods behind their house to Ashley's body, and together they wrap up her body in a tarp, they drag her to their backyard, start a fire, cover Ashley's body in gasoline, and then place her body on top of the fire in their attempt to get rid of her body completely. After the fire goes out, Jamie wraps up Ashley's remains, drives to a different wooded area, and disposes of the remainder remains there. And then on November 2nd, the couple gets ready to host this funeral. You can't make this up. But before the funeral can take place, the coroner's office says that they need to conduct an autopsy on the baby, and Amber has one question for the coroner. She says, hey, when you conduct the autopsy on my baby, do you think that you're going to test the DNA? And the coroner is taken aback. The coroner is the first person to be like, what is going on here? Something weird is happening. Something is not right. And the coroner and the funeral home say, okay, we are going to pause this funeral, delay this funeral until we get the autopsy results back because you two are acting really suspicious. And Amber is playing the victim, saying that she could not believe that she was being looked at suspiciously because she was a grieving mother and she was so sad and she was so depressed, mourning the loss of her baby. But the funeral home brings this to the attention of the investigators, who are well aware that a pregnant woman has been reported missing, and finally they start to connect the dots. And on November 3rd, Amber and Jamie were taken to the police station for questioning while another group of officers was working on getting a proper search warrant for their house. And that's when Jamie confesses everything, and he tells authorities everything that Amber told him about Ashley, about Lucy, about Ashley's baby, and the fact that their baby was not their baby. And he tells them where they disposed of Ashley's body, leaving the investigators' jaws on the floor. Amber Waterman was charged to everything she did, not only to Ashley but also to the baby. She eventually pled guilty and was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences in federal prison without the possibility of parole. And Jamie Waterman was charged with being an accessory after the fact. He has not yet been convicted, but he is facing up to 15 years in prison. He also did plead guilty. As you can imagine, when Ashley's loved ones, when her fiance Joshua was made aware of this entire situation, his entire world came crashing down, understanding that the love of his life was never coming home again, and he would never ever be able to meet their baby. And this is a quote from him, quote, "I'm disgusted in the whole situation. I wish that Ashley and Valkyrie were alive and home with us all. I can't believe that there are people out there that would do something like this. She was a great mother, a wonderful wife, a very outgoing, caring, and kind person. They did not deserve any of this. There are 3 amazing kids here that just lost their mother and best friend and little sister. I just love my wife and daughter. We are all going to support each other through this, but we are all devastated in the whole thing. We were all hoping and praying they would come home safely. I've lost all hope in humanity. I appreciate all the help out there from everyone," unquote. What do you even say about a case like this? Like, I also cannot believe that there are people out there who do this. And believe it or not, I think I may have done a video on a similar case to this before. Believe it or not, there are so many cases of women doing this. It's insanity. That is all I have for today's story. Thank you guys for spending time with me today. Thank you for listening to Ashley and Valkyrie's story. I hope you guys are having the best day. If not, go do something to make it the best day. Make somebody happy, and I will see you in my next video. Massive kiss on the forehead to every single one of you.
Let's talk about mimics. If you're new here, hi. I usually talk about some pretty scary stuff, and I have an email where anyone who finds this page can send me their ghost stories. And this is one of them. So let's get into it. This story comes from someone who would like to remain anonymous, and for obvious reasons, I'm going to respect that. And I absolutely love the title of this email because it says, "Not the scariest story ever." Which I think is funny because this is actually a very scary situation. This whole thing happened a couple years ago when the person who sent me this email was working at a restaurant. On this particular day, it was just her and one other coworker that were opening the restaurant for lunch. And it's important to note that her and her coworker were separated by quite some distance while they were opening the restaurant. And the person who sent me this email says that she was specifically on the salad line, while her coworker was on the other side of the restaurant in the dish room. And in the middle of setting up the salad line, she hears somebody, clear as day, say her name. The person who sent me this email says that it was not a quiet voice. It was as if somebody was irritated with her and trying to get her attention. At this point, she's completely frozen in fear, and she's like, what was that? Because it did not sound like her coworker. About 30 seconds pass before her coworker comes out of the dish room and says, "Did you hear that?" And the person who sent me this email responds back with, "Hear what?" Because she wanted her coworker to confirm exactly what she heard. And her coworker says, "Some guy called your name." So both of them walk through the entire restaurant and do not find anybody. And eventually at the end of the night, they go to their boss and say, like, "This is what happened to us this afternoon before we opened," and blah, 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 blah. their boss begins to tell them that the restaurant that they are currently standing in used to be a grocery store where there was a terrible fire and tons of people in the basement of this building. So there were just spirits running rampantly through this entire building. If you've been here a long time, then you know that one of my biggest fears is hearing something like that ever again. I've been in a situation where I have heard something that is not there call my name, and I have never forgotten about it. But anyways, that's going to do it for me. Stay tuned for more ghost stories.
In the late 1940s, Soviet researchers reportedly conducted a top-secret experiment on 5 political prisoners, sealing them in an airtight chamber and exposing them to a powerful stimulant gas designed to keep them awake for 30 days. According to accounts, the men never slept and over time began showing extreme psychological deterioration, paranoia, hallucinations and violent behaviour. The experiment allegedly ended in horror, with the prisoners either dead or permanently altered, and the full details were classified, leaving only fragmented reports of the nightmarish effects of total sleep deprivation. Here are the remaining logs, and I hope they chill you as much as they do me. Day 1. They brought in the prisoners this morning, 5 of them. Ordinary faces, though their eyes flickered like moths in a jar. The chamber was bright, sterile, humming. I noted their names in my log. They sat on the cot, muttering. The hiss of the gas was soft. Day 3. Still awake. They've stopped talking to us and started talking to each other in low tones, like a language they're inventing as they go. They cover the microphones with their hands when they speak. I dreamt last night of static and teeth. I woke with my heart hammering. Day 5. They're pacing now. Always pacing. One reads from a book with his eyes shut, whispering the words backwards. Another stands in the corner, nose to the wall, murmuring. When I lean into the speaker, I swear I hear my own name echo back. My colleagues laugh it off. Their laughter sounds rehearsed. Day 7. The screaming started at 4 a.m. Oh no. Thin at first, like a kettle. It swelled until the walls vibrated. Hours. Endless. The other subjects didn't react. They just watched the screamer with flat eyes. When he stopped, the silence rang like a bell. I covered my ears, but the ringing stayed. Day 9. Window covered. They've pasted pages from the books across the glass. Some kind of dark glue seeping through. We can't see them anymore. The microphones only pick up breathing. Not 5 breaths, 1. One slow breath filling the chamber. My supervisor says the sensors are faulty, but his hands are shaking. Day 12. No voices now. No movement. Just the hiss of the gas. But when I walk past the chamber at night, the hallway's warm like a body exhaling. I keep thinking of the world inside, as if there's more space in there than there should be. Day 15. We opened the chamber. We weren't supposed to. The smell, sweet, metallic, heavy, made my knees buckle. They were standing in a circle, eyes open, unblinking, not looking at us, looking past us. One of them smiled and whispered, "Don't turn off the quiet." I haven't slept since. Day 18. The chamber is empty now, or so they say. But when I walk past, I hear the pacing. Day 21. I see them when I close my eyes. Not their faces, but their eyes. Wide, dark, patient. They don't whisper anymore. They wait. The hiss of the gas is in my ears even when the room is silent. Sometimes I find myself standing outside the chamber door without remembering walking there. Day 24. I understand now. The gas didn't create anything. It scraped away the surface. Sleep isn't a break, it's a barrier. We opened the barrier and something stepped through. It lives behind our eyes. It lives in the cracks between thoughts. I feel it moving inside me, stretching, awake. Day 27. I don't know if the facility is empty or if I've gone deaf to other voices. The lights flicker in time with my pulse. My reflection lags a moment behind me in the mirror. I think the chamber is not a place anymore. It's a state. It's inside me. Day 30. I haven't slept. I can't. The walls of my room are breathing. The hiss is louder now, a lullaby made of knives, and when I blink, I see them. 5 silhouettes, no faces, just eyes like open doors. They stand at the edge of my bed waiting. Day 33. There are no days. There is only awake. The gas is in my blood. When I close my eyes, even for a heartbeat, I fall into a place with no floor. And they are there. They're smiling. They don't whisper. They don't need to. I'm almost one of them. Final entry. You think you're safe because you sleep. You think dreams are yours. They're not. They're the locks on a door you don't want open. And we turned the lock. We opened it. We learnt what waits. I can't keep this out of my head anymore. The hiss is here, right now. They're here, right now, behind your eyes and behind my words. Stay awake. Don't blink. They're waiting for you to.
Scary story time while I fix store-bought slime. Sent in by my grandmother. Yeah. So back when my grandmother was younger, she had this obsession with like dolls. The porcelain kind. It was a creepy one. Yeah. I got this slime from the Dollar Tree, by the way. One day my grandma and my grandpa, they went to the thrift store and they went to the thrift store and they found a porcelain doll, and my grandmother wanted it so bad and she begged my grandfather for it. Y'all, it has potential. It has potential. Okay, so before they get the doll, my grandpa was like, that doll looks creepy, and my grandma was like, no, like, she's not creepy, like. And so like, he gets the doll for her and they take it home, and my grandpa is still like saying, yeah, the doll's creepy. Okay, so she sets the doll up that night and they go to sleep, and I believe in the middle of the night, like, my grandma has this weird feeling that this doll is like staring at her, and the doll wasn't in its original position. It was moved and its head was like turned towards like their bed. So my grandma immediately wakes up my grandpa and she's like, the doll. Okay, so I just added water, but I didn't show that for some reason. Anyways, so my grandfather, he wakes up and he's like, what did I tell you? I told you the doll was creepy. Because my grandpa had like a creepy feeling too. So she was like, bag the doll up. Like, it literally moved from its original position. Bag the doll up. And my grandfather was like, no, we're gonna leave it here all night, and then in the morning we're gonna like bag it up, because if it moves while we're still here, I want to like know. So they literally could not sleep that night. They were just tossing and turning, and the doll is like, they had no problems before, but when they got back to the house, like, the doll just looked super creepy. Yeah. So it's morning time now and they're bagging the doll up. And what they do is they bag the doll up and they throw it on the freeway. And yeah, my grandmother had a haunted doll once. So like, the haunted stuff does run in the family. Okay, y'all, so the Dollar Tree came out with a new line of these slimes, and yeah, but I genuinely think that it has potential. I still have hope, y'all, but let me know what y'all think I should do to like fix the slime, because all I did was add shaving cream and water. I'm probably gonna add some activator, because like, it's kind of coming together. It's doing better than what it was doing before. The potential. Okay, y'all, what did I tell you? I told y'all I had potential. I told y'all. I definitely thought I broke it. I definitely did, but like, it's super stretchy and I can actually like poke it. Okay, it still don't got no sound. But like, I genuinely think I could fix this. It's just super stretchy. It's not pokey, but I will still try. Let me know what I should do in the comments.
Let's read another scary story that was sent to us. A few years ago, when I was in middle school, I was about 12 or 13, my older brother and I would walk home from school back to my grandparents' house that isn't far from there. We would stay there for a couple of hours until our dad picked us up, because our house was much further away. This one day that we got back to our grandparents' house, nobody was home. When we got in, my brother went into the living room and laid on the couch, and I went and sat at the kitchen bench with my laptop. When we walked in, I watched my brother jump on the couch and take a nap with a blanket on him, so it would not have been him who I had seen later. Anyway, I was playing around on Photo Booth on my laptop when I saw something or someone behind me. About 5 to 6 meters away, standing right at the bottom of the staircase to my back, there was a silhouette of a person on the screen. I took the filter that was on my computer off, thinking that that's what made it look like a person was there, but it remained. I don't know why I didn't turn back. I just kept staring at the screen, so I took a picture with no filter. When I looked at the photo of this thing in the dark corner of the room at the bottom of the staircase, I decided to turn back, and you guessed it, nothing was there. I was so confused in the moment, not scared at all though, oddly, but I was sure that I saw what I saw. I thought that my brother was messing with me, so I went to go ask him if that was him standing in the picture. But he was asleep when I asked him, and he woke up so confused, wondering why I'd asked that. He messed with me all the time, but on this one occasion he truly seemed genuine, and he was in the same spot I had seen him in when he went to the couch. Later that afternoon, my cousin in her early 20s who was living there at the time came home. I showed her the picture and it was blurry because of how dark this part of the house was, but it was clear that someone was standing there. I've always been into spooky stuff and spirits, so I asked her on that topic and she's all into that too. And she said that her mom and her sister have seen and heard some really odd things, saying they always saw something at the corner of their eye and a shadow standing at the bottom of the staircase. Possibly a woman, and thumping coming from upstairs when nobody is there. Like loud thumping. The house isn't super old, built in the 60s or 70s, but there's an attic that holds all of my nan and pop's old belongings, old dolls and heirlooms. And some of these things are really, really old, going back to mid-1800s. I don't know who or what it was, but I've never seen anything since then. Though when my cousin just a couple years ago had a kid, on the baby cam still living at the house, she saw some unexplainable things such as the blanket on the bed being rolled over her kid while he was sleeping and tugging of the blanket out of nowhere. That house is definitely haunted, and I can't help but wonder if maybe some of those like heirlooms are haunted. I don't know. But they think that maybe the spirit is a woman and they saw something or someone covering the baby up with the blanket. Maybe she's not a bad spirit. I don't know. What do y'all think? Let's read some more scary stories that were sent to us. This happened to me and my friend 2 years ago at my birthday party. It was 10 o'clock at night when me and my friend started hearing footsteps coming from downstairs. Reminder, it was late at night and no one was downstairs, so we thought nothing of it and just started fooling around. Then, all of a sudden, we heard someone running. That's when we knew something was off. We looked in the hallway and there was nothing there, so we closed the door and decided to hide under the covers. We were really scared but decided to come out from under the covers, then all of a sudden the power went out. Now we could hear running again, but this time it was coming from the attic. We were both terrified, but then it just stopped, or so we thought. That's when we started hearing something clawing at my bedroom door. We never had a sleepover at my house again, but I still hear things, like something is here with me. This happened to me just the other day. Me, my cousin, and my brother all went swimming around 8 o'clock at night. It was already very dark outside because of the time change. So, we are swimming in the pool when all of a sudden my cousin starts screaming that someone touched her. That's when I looked over my shoulder and saw this huge, tall, slim, black figure standing there. We ran inside and I was so out of breath and had a horrible feeling. Then all of a sudden, I felt like something was choking me, but there was nothing there. Slender Man? I don't know. A few years ago, my little brother passed away. My family and I were sitting in the living room, and on the shelf beside us there was a candle. Out of nowhere, the candle started rattling and moving around. We looked to see if anything could have been vibrating it, but there was nothing. I think it was some sort of communication from my brother. That's one of those sweet, sad ones, and I definitely think that it was your brother communicating with y'all.
What is going on in South Africa? This guy sold his soul to a mermaid spirit. I am back with another spooky story. This one is yet another submission from Eastern Cape, South Africa. Yeah. The person said, I'd like to stay anonymous because even now, I still don't feel safe telling this story. I'm gonna call the person who submitted this story BK. BK says that she's from Eastern Cape near, I'm sorry if I butcher this, Mthatha. Where she grew up, people always warned them about, again, sorry if I butcher this, Abantu Bomlambo. Water spirits, mermaids, the ones who grant gifts but take something in return. BK never believed any of it. But her cousin, who we'll call Lita, believed a little too much. Lita was 22 when it all started. He was desperate. No job, no money, his girlfriend was pregnant and he felt like a failure. One night, he told BK that he found a woman who can help him become rich in 7 days. BK thought it was a scam, but the way his eyes looked, it was like something had already convinced him. And he told her that she's not human, she's from the river. BK's thinking he's joking. until she started to notice certain things. He kept waking up with wet clothes. There were wet footprints that led to his bedroom, as if someone was visiting him at night. He said that he was dreaming of this woman with blue skin, long locks floating under the water. The eyes glowed white. She kept calling his name, saying that she could give him everything. Lita told BK that he was scared, but he was tempted. One night around 3 a.m., BK woke up to him pacing outside, shirtless, mumbling something. And when she approaches him, he realized he wasn't talking, he was actually chanting. He asked him, bro, what are you doing? And he told her, I'm being summoned. And his voice sounded weird and distorted. BK's like, he's losing it. I don't have time for this. She goes back inside. Well, the next morning, he was gone. And they searched for him for hours until someone shouted from the riverbank. When they got there, Lita was standing waist deep in the water, eyes rolled back, whispering something to the water, and the river wasn't calm. It looked like it was swirling all around him. Before they could reach him, he dropped under. Everybody is screaming. The uncle jumps in, tries to swim to him. After a minute, Lita just floats back up, unconscious but alive. When he woke up that evening, he didn't remember much of anything, but he kept saying she accepted the offer. A week later, he had money, a car, a new phone. Lita went around telling people that his newfound fortune actually came from a business opportunity, but everybody around him knew better. While enjoying his newfound wealth, well, strange things started happening. He couldn't stand sunlight anymore. He kept hearing voices coming from the bathroom. Every morning, he would wake up with his feet covered in river mud. Sometimes he would wake up in various places that he doesn't remember going to. One night, BK heard him crying from his room. She opened the door. There he was, sitting on the floor, shaking. He told her she's coming to collect, but what he didn't know was that she wanted him in return. And that's when everything got worse. Maybe don't accept anything from mermaid spirits, guys. This story is spooky as fuck. I already know I'm gonna have to make y'all come back for a part 2. But you also can't say anything because I dropped another video today. So this is two spooky stories in one day. And also, you can't be rude. It's my birthday week. So, comment part 2. I'll be back very soon, sooner than you think.
This is one of the saddest true crime cases I've ever come across, and there is still no closure for Jody's family. Jody Huisentruit was born in Long Prairie, Minnesota on June 5th of 1968. She was the youngest of all of her children. She was a bright and driven child. After she graduated high school, she went to St. Cloud University, and there she studied in mass communications and speech communication. She graduated with a bachelor's degree in 1990, and right after graduating that, she became a flight attendant at Northwest Airlines. After the flight attendant career, she began her broadcasting career. At first, she worked with a CBS affiliate, KGAN, in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. She then returned to Minnesota for a job at the ABC affiliate KSAX in Alexandria. And then she would go back to Iowa, and there she worked as a CBS affiliate KIMT in Mason City. The day before Jody went missing, it seemed like a pretty typical day. She was at a golf tournament, and then she spent some time with a man named John Vansis. I probably pronounced his name wrong, correct me down in the comments, but she went to his house to watch a videotape of a birthday celebration that he had made for her about a month prior to this. She was scheduled to work the next morning. This was June 27th of 1995. She was supposed to be at work at 4 in the morning. At 4:10, she still wasn't at work, so one of her coworkers called her. She talked to Jody on the phone. Jody said, "I overslept. I'll be there in a minute." But 6 a.m. rolled around and Jody still wasn't at work, so this was kind of alarming, but one of her coworkers filled in for her, and then at 7:13, Jody still wasn't at work, so her coworkers called the police. When police arrived at Jody's apartment, they found a red Mazda Miata, and it also looked like there had been a struggle around the car. Several of Jody's personal items were scattered around the car. One of them was also a bent car key and her red high-heel shoe. Police talked to several of Jody's neighbors. All of them said that they heard a scream right around the time that Jody would have been leaving for work. Another one of their neighbors said that he saw a white Ford Ecoline idling in the parking lot, and this was not a car that they normally saw. Police were able to get a palm print from a pole nearby, but this was an unidentified palm print, and it appears as if they never found who it belonged to. There was an active investigation into Jody's disappearance, but in September of that same year, her parents did hire a private investigator to look into what happened to Jody, but no one's been able to find her. She's not been seen ever since.
Her family, obviously heartbroken and desperate to find her, even traveled to California to be on a show where they would talk to psychics. This show did generate several leads, but none of them led to anything. Several strange things have happened since Jodi went missing. In 2008, there were 84 copies of Jodi's personal journal sent to a newspaper. This would later to be found to have been Cheryl Elginson. She was the wife of the former chief of police, David Elginson. No one knows why Cheryl sent these copies of Jodi's journal to the newspaper, and no one knows why David even took this piece of evidence home with him after he left the job. In March of 2017, the man that Jodi had spent the day before she went missing with, or when she went to his house to go watch this video, there was a search warrant executed on his vehicles. They were looking for GPS data for his vehicles. But police never explained why they were looking at this information or if this John guy was a person of interest. They never explained anything. Unfortunately, he passed away in December of 2024. He was never charged with anything. And in 2024, there was a wooded area in Winstead, Minnesota that was searched. And this was I guess police got a tip, but again, nothing came of this either. Jodi has been missing ever since. There is a reward out there for any information that will lead to Jodi's case being solved, but it just appears as if nothing has happened since she's gone missing. So what are your thoughts on this case? Let me know down in the comments. Follow for more true crime.
I grew up in a haunted house in Massachusetts. My family and I have had many spooky experiences over the years, but a few have stuck out like sore thumbs that I can never forget. One night, I was in my bed asleep when suddenly I felt a sudden jolt to wake up. And as soon as I did, someone was mumbling at the end of my room where I had a couch that I used to feed my 2 babies. I looked over and saw what looked like a man in old Western attire, sitting there with his hands covering his face, and I could smell what smelled like old tobacco coming from him. He mumbled something like, "I know you can hear me. I know you can. I want to talk to you." He slowly lifted his head and looked in my direction. I tried to move my body and scream, but I couldn't move, and no sound would come out of my mouth. The room felt very cold, and I'd heard him say, "Well, if you won't talk to me and ignore me, I'm going to get closer to you." I tried to move my body to scream or cry, but nothing could be done. I saw him get up and walk over to me and go past my baby's crib, and immediately, on cue, my daughter started screaming and crying. The man was inches away from me, standing over me while my daughter was crying in her crib, reaching out to me. He kept mumbling something, but my baby's cry made it too hard to understand him. I turned my head, closed my eyes, and started praying to God to let me get up. Just then, my mom came through my bedroom door. She said she could hear my daughter crying all the way from her room and was checking to see if I was up. As soon as my mom came in, the man faded away. I suddenly was able to get up and could finally speak. In tears, I told her what happened. My mom noticed the smell of smoke and how cold my room felt. I held my daughter and had her sleep with me the rest of the night. Also, I want to point out that no one smokes in our house, so I'll never forget the smell that filled my room. Well, the next 2 encounters happened last October, 3 days before Halloween. I was doing my makeup and hair in the bathroom getting ready for work, and my mom was going downstairs to feed her cats. The entire time I was in the bathroom. My mom looked across into the dining room and said she saw me sitting at the table, looking up at her with an angry look on my face, and then slowly looked back down at my phone. But then suddenly she heard me curse out because I had messed up my makeup. It freaked her out because she had just seen me in the dining room staring at her. My mom came into the bathroom with a scared look on her face and asked me, "Weren't you just in the dining room?" I said, "No, I've been messing up on my makeup. Oh, why?" She didn't seem to believe me, so she asked me again, and I replied, "No." She explained to me what she witnessed, but as soon as she heard me in the bathroom, the thing sitting at the table disappeared. Well, a couple days ago, a similar situation happened, but this time it happened to my dad. A couple days ago, a similar situation happened, but this time it happened to my dad. I should mention my father is a very religious, conservative man and does not tend to believe in the paranormal, but after this incident, I think he has second thoughts. My father was coming into the house from grocery shopping and had opened the front door, which leads to the kitchen and dining room. He had a couple of heavy bags and looked up and saw me standing there by the entrance to the dining room, staring at him. He asked if I could help him with the rest of the groceries, but the figure just stared at him with a mean look and didn't budge. He said he told me that it wasn't too much and that he needed me to come outside with him, but the figure just kept staring at him. He went back outside to get groceries out of the car, and this is when he sees me coming up the driveway as I had been out doing errands. As I was coming out of the car, I noticed his face looking confused. I asked him what was wrong. He asked, "Weren't you just in the dining room?" That's when he explained what happened. This really creeped me out because my father is not one to believe in the paranormal. The facial expressions he made told me all I needed to know, that this really happened to him. Besos, Naomi.
You can't make this stuff up. Might have known the story of real-life boogeyman.
Brian Joplin was born in 1972 and was raised in this tiny town in Oklahoma called Hugo. He was a big guy, so growing up, he was always encouraged to play football, and he did, but his real passion had always been working on cars. It was something he loved to do, and he was extremely good at doing. After he graduated high school, he stuck around in Hugo doing some auto body work, but he got this feeling that he should do something bigger with his life. And so in 1992, he decided to enlist in the United States Navy. This was something his family was extremely proud of him for doing, especially his grandfather, who had flown bomber planes during World War II. Following Brian's initial military training, better known as boot camp, he was sent to Aviation Machinist Mate School, which is a military school for military members that teaches you how to be a mechanic for all things that fly. And so after Brian breezed through the school, because he was already a very skilled mechanic, and so it came to him naturally, he was sent to his first duty station out in California. And so he joins his California unit, and immediately he excels, and he becomes one of the very best mechanics at his unit, despite being one of the most junior. And while he was in California, he also met his wife, Belinda. And so over the next several years that he was in California, and then he moved around to Texas and a couple other places, he just continued to shine at work. And at home, he and his wife began building a family. They had 2 daughters. And so by and large, everything in Brian's life was going exactly to plan, until Brian made a terrible mistake. Fast forward to October 4th, 2005, and Brian, who was 32 at the time, was deployed with his unit to Bahrain, which is a country in the Persian Gulf. That particular day, Brian, along with 2 other mechanics from his unit and 2 pilots from his unit, had been tasked with flying from Bahrain north to Kuwait, which is another country in the Persian Gulf. This was a routine flight, about an hour long. It was one they had made several times during this deployment. Brian was not really looking forward to doing it, and neither were the other people that were on this particular flight. But Brian decided the way he would make this trip less monotonous and boring is he would perform the stunt. So Brian and the other 2 mechanics, they load in the back of this helicopter in the cargo area, so the passenger area of this helo, and the 2 pilots, they load into the cockpit. And within a couple of minutes, they were 125 feet off the ground, careening forward out over the Persian Gulf at over 120 miles an hour. Brian and the other 2 mechanics in the back of this craft had elected to keep the back loading ramp that folds up and down to allow people to come in and out of this helicopter. They had decided to keep it down for this flight. So basically, they had this huge opening that just looked straight down to the earth. But this is a very common thing in the military. Lots of helicopters, when they're flying around, have either a side door open or the back ramp down, because it provides an incredible view, and more importantly, it provides this amazing breeze inside of the cabin. A few minutes later, when the helicopter is way out over the Persian Gulf, Brian decides now is a good time to do this stunt. And so he looks across at the other side of the helicopter and kind of signals at the other two mechanics. It's super loud inside of the back of a helo, and so there's no way they could have spoken to each other besides with a headset, and they were not about to speak about the stunt over the headset because they didn't want the pilots to know. And so Brian signaled to the other two because they were totally in on his stunt he was about to do. And so they grinned, and one of them pulled out a camera to be ready for what he was going to do. And then Brian disconnected his helo lanyard. So inside of a military helicopter, you'll find all these metal eyelets, these little rings all over the floor, the walls, the ceiling, and these are there in order to attach cargo or strap things down, or to attach yourself, a person, inside of the helicopter. And so the way you do that is by using your helo lanyard. It's this belt you wear that has this special strap that comes off the front of it, and at the end of this 1 or 2 foot long strap is a carabiner, a clip, and you clip that onto any of those eyelets. And so that keeps you from flying out of the helicopter. If the pilots need to maneuver suddenly, or if you lose altitude, anything can happen inside. And so Brian removes his helo lanyard and then grabs this stretch of nylon rope. It was like a crudely built safety harness that kind of functioned like a helo lanyard in the sense that there was a carabiner on one end, and on the other there was a way to attach it to yourself. But unlike it being this belt and kind of high-tech system that attached to him, it was really just kind of a slip knot on one end of this 10-foot long line. And so Brian most likely had built this 10-foot long safety harness for this particular stunt, or someone else had. But either way, he picks this up after detaching his helo lanyard, and he puts the loop end of this 10-foot line, the slip knot end, over his head down to his waist, and then cinched it tight. And then he very carefully stood up and walked towards the back of the helo, and then he clipped the end of this 10-foot line with the carabiner into one of the eyelets on the ground, right where the back ramp begins to go down. And so once that was in place, he turned and looked at the other two mechanics and gave them one more thumbs up, and then he got down on his hands and knees and he begins crawling backwards down the ramp. And so once he gets to the very edge of this ramp, so literally right behind him is just the open air. At that point, he grabs with his left hand one of those metal rings that are on the actual ramp itself. He gets a firm grip with one hand, and then with his right hand, he grabs the side of the ramp. There's some metal framing there. And so once he had a good grip and he felt confident in it, he kind of slowly lowered his lower half until it slipped off of the ramp. And as soon as it did, the winds outside the helicopter, the 120-mile-an-hour plus winds, they immediately swept his legs up and kind of held them in the air horizontal like he was flying. And so he's holding on to the back of the ramp, but his arms are kind of tucked up near his chest. But once he feels his legs up in the air, he slowly extends himself, and finally, when they were fully extended, he was officially doing the Superman stunt. This was called Supermaning, what he was doing. And as soon as he was in this position, the other crew members inside of the helicopter, they knew this was it. Let's take some pictures. And so one of them got their camera out and took some pictures of him. And Brian knows he's getting pictures taken. He's holding on as tight as he can. And then after the pictures were taken and Brian looked up and kind of got the thumbs up that he was good, he began trying to pull himself back into the helicopter, but he lost his grip. And as soon as he lost his grip, those 120-mile-an-hour plus winds, they whipped him backwards, and the safety harness that he had strapped around his waist, that's the only thing that caught him from flying away from the helicopter. And so Brian attempts to try to grab the ramp, but it's too far away, and as he's getting pulled by the wind away from the helicopter, that harness that was around his waist, it rides up until it stops right around his chest. And so at that point, he keeps his arms pinned by his side because he doesn't want the harness to slip up over his shoulders, because then he will fall to his death. But because this harness was self-tightening, as he was whipping in the winds, the wind was pulling him so hard away from the helicopter that it was tightening that loop around his chest. And so his chest got so tightly squeezed that it caused him to pass out. And as soon as that happened, his arms that were holding that harness in place, well, his arms went limp, and then the wind whipped his arms over his head, and the harness immediately slipped up over his shoulders, off his head, off his arms, and he went flying 125 feet all the way down to the water below, where he died. There were at least 8 people that were punished for this incident, including the 2 crew members in the back of the helicopter taking pictures because they were totally in on this. But the details of the punishments were never made public.
The amount of people that disappear after a car crash is so bizarre. This is one of those stories, and the woman in this photo here is named Patricia Meehan. So in 1985, Patricia was living in Bozeman, Montana, and she was working at a ranch. Now, the last person to see her before she disappeared was her landlord, and he said that she was acting very bizarre, almost like she was very, very hyper. On April 19th, 1989, the day before she disappeared, she had spoken to her father on the phone, telling him that she was under a lot of stress and that she just really wanted to come home. Around 8 p.m. on April 20th of 1989, two cars were driving down the highway. A woman named Peggy Buller and her father were driving on one side of the road, but the other car was driving down the same road, except they were going in the wrong direction. The two cars were about to have a head-on collision, but they ended up swerving. But instead of crashing head-on, one of the vehicles ended up hitting the car behind them, which happened to be an off-duty police officer. This woman was named Carol, and although she was fine, she was not injured in the accident. Her car was pretty badly beat up and on the side of the road. She manages to get out of the vehicle, but at the same time she also sees another woman getting out of the third vehicle. That woman would later be identified as being Patricia Meehan. Carol then says that this woman approaches her and literally just stands and stares at her, almost as if she was looking right through her. Peggy Buller, who was driving the other car, was still inside of her vehicle, except she was parked on the side of the road and witnessed the entire interaction. She then said that she saw Patricia climb over a fence and just stare at the accident. They then said that this woman stared for a few more minutes and then walked off into a dark field. Peggy drove into town with her father in order to call the authorities, and within 30 minutes they were on scene, but obviously by then there was no sign of Patricia anywhere. However, they did manage to find a set of tennis shoe footprints in the terrain, but eventually they lost track of them around 3 a.m. And from there the search was suspended until the following morning. Her parents arrived into town the next day and also helped in the search for her, but there was no sign of Patricia anywhere, and authorities believed that it was possible that she may have hitchhiked her way out of town. And early on in the case, it was suspected that she may have been suffering from some sort of head injury or potentially amnesia to explain her strange behavior at the car scene. And since she disappeared, there have been over 5,000 sightings of Patricia all over the United States. But 25 of them seem to be serious sightings, with 3 of them having been confirmed being Patricia. Many of the confirmed sightings came from 1989, and a lot of them said that she was acting very strange. During some of the sightings, she said that she was from different parts of the country. Other times she refused to give her name, and one time she even said that she was from Israel. Some people even said that she was talking to herself, while others said that she was sitting in a booth drinking water for 5 hours, all by herself. Eventually, the case went cold, and in 2001, Patricia was declared as legally deceased. And of course, there have been plenty of theories speculating as to what could have happened to Patricia. Some believe that maybe she was suffering from some sort of head injury, got lost, and then passed away due to the exposure outside, while others believe that she may have potentially planned her disappearance. It's been well over 30 years since Patricia disappeared, and her family still hopes that they will get answers as to what happened to her. It's been 7 years since Carly Gusay disappeared from her family home in California. Now, this all took place on October 13th of 2018 when Carly was just 16, and her family was living in an area called Chalfant Valley. So on Friday, October 12, 2018, Carly had told her family that she was going to go to a football game at her high school, except she did not go to a football game. Instead, she went to a house party. And it was at this house party where she was hanging out with her boyfriend, a couple other friends, and they all decided to smoke some Mary Jane. Later on into the evening, Carly started acting very frantic. It was very odd and bizarre behavior, to the point where people thought that maybe the Mary Jane had been laced. Her boyfriend explained that she was acting very oddly, that she was afraid of the music, and at one point she was even afraid of him. And it got so bad that late into the evening she decided to call her stepmother to come pick her up. So her stepmother, Melissa, goes to the house party, picks her up, and takes her back home, and she would later describe as Carly being between a state of lucidity and paranoia. And while they were back home in Carly's bedroom, she said that she decided to record a portion of the conversation that she was planning on using as a teaching tool. She went on to record about 8 minutes of their conversation where Carly admitted that she had messed up, and Melissa is heard saying that it's fine, that everybody makes mistakes. But then Carly started saying some very odd things, suggesting that Melissa was going to end her life. Of course, Melissa was very caught off guard about this, saying that why would she even say something like that? And Carly admits that she was not thinking straight. Then around 5 a.m., Melissa said that she finally dozed off, but when she woke up later that morning, there was no sign of Carly anywhere. The only clue that was left behind was Carly's cell phone, and it was left on the kitchen counter. Right away, Melissa and Carly's father, Zachary, searched the entire house. They also searched the neighborhood, but there was no sign of Carly anywhere. Authorities were called in. They also did their own search, but there was no sign of Carly. However, they did come across a few witnesses. 3 eyewitnesses would come forward and say that they saw Carly on the morning of October 13th. One of them, who happened to live close to the family, said that he recognized her and that she was walking along the highway and she was holding a piece of paper, looking up around the sky. Another eyewitness, who lived even closer to the family, said that he definitely saw her because he knew her, so there was no mistaking her. And he also said the same thing, that she was walking down the highway holding a piece of paper. And then the third eyewitness came forward and said a very similar thing, except he said that she was standing on the highway near some sort of sage bush. And coincidentally, it was around this same area where the search dogs also lost track of Carly. Now, during the investigation, authorities initially thought that maybe Carly's boyfriend or even her stepmother had something to do with this. But using cell phone records, everyone was quickly cleared. They also searched Carly's phone and her computer, but it did not reveal any important information. Years would go by, but in 2021, a very important clue came into the authorities. The call came in from a very small town in Nevada called Tonopah, which is about 100 miles away from Carly's family home in California. Now, this person says that they swore they saw Carly at a house party. Investigators did not release much more information from this phone call. However, they did say that they believe that a vehicle may have likely picked up Carly from the highway, and that they were actively investigating the lead taking them to Tonopah. However, there have been no further updates in the disappearance of Carly Gousset, so if you know anything about what happened to her, contact this number here.